Let's begin this hour with our top story, the ongoing war in the Middle East and President Trump's new threat to Iran. Take a look at this. In a post to Truth Social this morning, the president said the U.S. is holding serious discussions with a, quote, new and more reasonable regime. But he also threatened in that same message to obliterate the energy sector if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened. In an interview to the Financial Times over the weekend, the president floated the idea of seizing Kog Island as thousands of U.S. troops arrive in the region. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer, who has been to Iran many times, joins us now from London to talk about what's happening in the Middle East. Liz, good to see you again. What are we hearing from Iranian officials about what President Trump says are talks and now the prospects of a possible U.S. ground invasion?
Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is still holding its regular media briefing. So just a couple of hours ago, the spokesman said, countering the president, that Iran has had no direct negotiations with the United States. He acknowledged that Iran had received what it called messages from the Americans, but that they contained excessive and unreasonable demands. He also poured cold water on talks that have been mooted to go ahead in Pakistan. He said that that's simply not going to happen, at least not with Iran's participation. What's really going on? Well, only Iranian insiders know. There's no question the country is being pummeled. There was very heavy bombing around the country last night, including in Tehran. And eventually the regime needs that to stop. For now, though, it has a powerful leverage in that it's able to choke the Straits of Hormuz and force the price of oil up. So who knows when the pain threshold is too high for the Iranian regime. It's a fair bet there will be negotiations eventually, and we know that the main condition of the regime will be some kind of guarantee that it remains in power.
We really don't know, you're right, Liz, what is going on, and it's such a rare few who do know the extent to the negotiations, if negotiations are even happening. We're getting these mixed messages from President Trump. Give us a reality check about where things stand.
Well, I think around the world, real consternation over the lack of a plan to either win the war or maybe even define the terms of victory or end it. And if you look to the markets, the oil markets, for example, $116 a barrel a few minutes ago when I checked, about a third higher than at the end of 2025, so just a few months ago. The markets clearly don't have a lot of faith that the president is going to resolve this conflict anytime soon. And in Europe, there is huge consternation because the disruption to shipping is also disrupting the supply of fertilizer just at the beginning of the planting season all over Europe. So there's great worry and not a lot of optimism that this is going to end soon on good terms for anybody.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang joins us now with more. Weijia, President Trump once again threatening to strike key Iranian infrastructure. What do we know, and how could this factor into a potential ground invasion?
Adriana, just this morning, the president posted on social media that the U.S. was having serious discussions with what he called a new and more reasonable regime. But he also warned that if a deal was not reached, that the U.S. would blow up all of Iran's energy infrastructures, which, of course, could lead to a global catastrophe. You're seeing what he posted there on your screen. And we know that this comes amid beefing up security, beefing up military assets in the region. In fact, just a short time ago, our colleague Jennifer Jacobs confirmed that hundreds of U.S. Special Forces service members, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, were going to the region for a potential special operation, which could range from anything from securing that highly enriched uranium that still exists, that Iran would need to make a nuclear weapon, to opening the Strait of Hormuz. We just don't know. And, you know, in terms of the question about troops on the ground, from the very beginning, the White House has said that will remain as an option on the table for President Trump. And he has sent kind of mixed signals about will he or won't he. In fact, less than 2 weeks ago, he said, I'm not putting troops anywhere And if I were, I wouldn't tell you. He was asked again about this last night aboard Air Force One, and here's what he said.
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. We're ahead of schedule with Iran.
So again, he's not saying one way or another, but he has alternatives, he says. I think it's important to note, guys, that for many Democrats and a growing number of Republicans, boots on the ground does seem to be the red line. We're seeing more and more people in his own party speaking out against troops on the ground and saying he has to come to Congress and talk about his plan and make a case for sending those servicemen and women into Iran before he does it. But of course, we know the president has said before that he does not believe he needs congressional approval to make these decisions. Adriana, Errol.
And Weijia, I want to ask you about a region closer to home. The president says Cuba is next, but he's also, it seems, allowing oil tankers to make it to the country after saying that they could not. So what's the positioning there? Well,
the president has toyed with the idea of Cuba being the U.S.'s next target. And last night, he didn't mince any words. He said, quote, Cuba is going to be next. Cuba is a mess, he said. It's a failing country, and they're going to be next. Within a short period of time, it's going to fail, and we will be there to help it out. Of course, we know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been trying to have diplomatic conversations with Cuba. So this allowing this Russian oil tanker off the coast of Cuba to go through, despite a U.S. oil blockade, could be a sign that those efforts are ongoing. But I think the most important part of this is what the president said about, the fact that he is eyeing Cuba next.
All right, Weijia Jiang with the latest from the White House. Weijia, thanks so much.